Yes, number 1 for me is the University of Georgia. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Florida State. Number 4, breaking in their way all the way up this high into the top 10, I put Texas. Number 5, Washington. Number 6, USC. Number 7, Penn State. Number 8, Ohio State. Number 9, shocker, I put Notre Dame in there somehow. And then number 10, Alabama. No LSU. I will say, and I know this is going to be a sticking point, and we're going to get to it in a second.
That didn't bother me.
LSU's 11 for me. That's what my point was, and we're probably going to get to that in a second. Do you want to share yours, and then we go at each other here?
Sure. Not a lot of difference. That's not yours, or that's not mine. This is mine. Look, we have a lot of the same things in here. Basically, the only difference is you have Texas a little bit higher than I do. So for everybody listening on the audio podcast, I have number 1, Georgia, 2, Michigan, who, by the way, I really, really like what I saw from Michigan this weekend, even though they played Rudy Poo Tech. J.J. McCarthy. By the way, can I tell you something, hot take really quickly? I was close to putting Michigan at 1.
I'm fine with that.
Really close. Dog, bro.
I'm fine with that.
Bro, here's the thing about Michigan. I know that they played Rudy Poo Tech back-to-back weeks. They look incredible. But what's going to happen, the reason I didn't was because I was like, what's going to happen when they play somebody with a pulse? So yes. I'm waiting. But if you see me put Michigan at number 1 in the next couple of weeks, don't be alarmed. You better break down that film. They look really good. Number 3, Florida State. Number 4, USC. Number 5, Ohio State. Number 6, Texas. Number 7, Penn State. Number 8, LSU, which basically here I'm putting LSU in, taking Washington out. And we have the same with Notre Dame at 9 and Alabama at number 10. Joe, I don't really have an issue with your top 10. I still don't trust Washington yet, okay? I still feel like you got to show me a little something. Look, I have 2 games where in the first 2 halves against really and truthfully Boise State might be an okay team, but you can't struggle in back-to-back first halves for me and think that I'm going to put you in the top 10. When I look at, for example, Alabama and LSU's losses for me are better than anything Washington has done in the win column.
Okay, so that's where I think that we have a really big difference, and I'm glad that you brought up Washington because that's one of my qualms with you not including them. I think that when we're at week 2, and this is a debate that I'm having for my FCS poll that I put out as a part of the Stats National poll, that a lot of people just don't get. I am more of the belief in the first 4 weeks, with the exception of huge wins like Texas pulled out, that the eye test is the most important aspect of this, because there's just not enough teams playing enough opponents to use those victories or maybe quality losses as evidence for how good they are. The way that they play in those games is what I'm factoring into this heavily. And who I have seen so far has shown me the most. And I think that Washington, why I have to put them in there and ahead of USC, albeit they haven't played anybody, neither has USC. And I think that Washington has been the most balanced Pac-12 team out of any of them. Boise State almost beat UCF, and UCF is one of the better Big 12 teams. They're probably the best new Big 12 team, and they almost beat them. I think that the Boise State team is underrated, and their performance against their last 2 opponents is proof that they're going to put up a lot of points, and defensively they can be very suffocating.
The problem with Washington is this week they go to East Lansing to play Michigan State, okay? And they're a dumpster fire.
They're going to kick.
Well, and it's going to look different because they're a dumpster fire. Michigan State does not have the team.
Is it in poor taste if I took Washington State to cover the 15-point line that's on this game?
No, I would. I'd take it. I mean, I don't.
Well, I did do that.
But I don't like when teams travel that far.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe, that game's at 2 p.m., which in theory would be a 12 or 11 a.m. kickoff for them normally.
Yeah.
I don't like when teams have to go that far, play on the road in a different time frame. But they don't really play anybody until I think it's week 7, week 6. They got Michigan State this week. Then they got Cal. They go to Arizona. Then they got Oregon. So they're more than likely going to be undefeated going into that Oregon game. They don't really have a massive test for me. Now, I know that the final scores, okay, 56-19, 43-10. But, Joe, those games are a lot closer than just box score watching. So I went and watched. Will Nixon was their leading rusher this past week. They cannot run the football. They cannot run the football. They had multiple backs that have gotten injured. They can't. Joe, they're having to throw for 409 yards to create all this. Now, I get it, and I need to probably be careful with that. I don't think that I would put them in the top 12. I'm not saying they're a bad team, okay? Like, I'm not – for an example, let me just put this out. If Penn State loses this week, well, Washington's in. Notre Dame loses this week. Do they play this week, by the way?
They play Central Michigan.
Okay. Well, when they get their asses kicked by Central Michigan this week, all right, obviously I'll take them out. But the bottom line for me when I was making this was not really an LSU versus Washington argument. It was an Alabama versus Washington argument, okay? I don't think that Washington can beat Alabama on a neutral site, Jalen Milroe included. I just don't. They don't have the dudes.
I disagree with that. I think that the way that, and I understand the concerns for their lack of run game. I think that with the way that their offensive line is built, that they eventually could develop one and get into a rhythm. But there are only a handful of teams. There's maybe 5 teams in the country right now that I know that can stretch defense the way that they can do it. They can score in a second if they need to, because McMillan and Adunze are explosive receivers, and they've got a guy that's got one of the best arms in college football. His deep ball is fantastic. He's got good touch, he's got good placement, and he's got the power to drive the ball down the field. I think that offense is only going to get more dangerous. This is an interesting point because it opens up the USC debate. People love to say that I'm a USC hater, blah, blah, blah. I get what you did against Stanford this past week is impressive. You beat the shit out of them. But I'm still not going to put any stock in them until I see a real shutdown defensive performance against one of the better teams in the Pac-12. Stanford doesn't mean anything to me. Do it against an actually breathing opponent, and then I can move them up.
I don't disagree with you on that, and I have USC pretty high. Joe, they're 3-0, and the bottom line is that game, more than likely, USC versus Washington is going to be, and look, we're supposed to project on this, right? Like, we're not supposed to, just go week by week, but we do so many times. Mm-hmm. I think if USC and Washington gets in a shootout, I think USC wins it. I will tell you, I'm more willing to put in Oregon than I am
Washington.
Yeah.
No. So that's where I really, really disagree with you. They looked really messy against Texas Tech, and I know Texas Tech. We talked about how good they could be, and they failed the week 1 against Wyoming, but they should have beaten them by two plus scores.
Well,
I will say this:
Texas Tech isn't a bad team, and you know what else, Joe? Here's the truth. That's why I don't like teams going that far on the road in different time zones.
They were playing in Texas heat, though. Michigan State's not going to be.
Joe, you know what? If my aunt had a yoo-hoo, okay, she'd be my uncle. I'm tired of these excuses. So, hold on. Florida doesn't get the excuse of going to Utah playing in the elevation, but everybody else that's not from the South, all I hear is in the Texas heat. Joe, I've been in the Louisiana heat all summer. You know what the average has been? 114. The heat index has made it feel 114 all summer.
Okay. My point here is that Oregon doesn't exactly get scorching temperatures. So for them to go on the road to play Texas Tech, like, they were going to play like crap. But my whole point here, why I don't like Oregon and I like Washington a lot more, is that last year in their big games, they were mistake prone. They turned the ball over. They failed to convert on third down. And all that crap showed up against Texas Tech, who's supposed to be
they're still a good team. I'm still fine with Texas Tech. Wyoming won big this weekend, by the way. What if Wyoming at the end of the year is 9-3, 10-2? Then what?
Do you know who Wyoming plays this week, by the way, that could do the funniest damn thing ever?
God, who? Rhode Island.
No, they play Texas. Do you know how look, it's not going to happen.
Really? Texas has Wyoming.
It's not going to happen, but it would be so goddamn funny and perfectly chaotic if Wyoming beat Texas. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, but for that to be the follow-up after Alabama would be so fitting. It would be the most Steve Sarkisian thing ever for them to do. So I am going to be quietly rooting for that. I'm going to just put that out there.
God, you hate Texas so much. And they blame me.
I don't. I'm one of those people that if a fan base annoys me, I root against the fan base. I don't root against the team on the field.
Speaking of fan bases.
Yeah.
Alabama fan base, when they were yelling at Texas fans, did you hear that?
No, man. Terrible.
I mean, come on, dude. Come on. All right. What do you dislike about mine? Obviously, you're going LSU here.
No, not the LSU thing. Because I thought you were going to point out that I didn't include LSU. And I have to admit,
I don't mind that. Look, I don't mind that. They lost to Florida State. I get why people don't put them in there. But here's another thing. Speaking on that, the SEC is wide open.
It is. It really is. And that's going to be in relation to my overreaction Monday take later on in the show. I actually think that after I put this this graphic together, that my placement of Alabama was a little bit indefensible. Like I couldn't come up with why I put them there. I put it on the graphic. Then after I posted, I'm like, why did I put Alabama in the top 10? I actually feel a lot better about LSU against Alabama on a neutral field right now. And that's how I base a lot of these rankings. I think that, albeit Florida State won in lopsided fashion against LSU, that's still a much better team to lose to than Texas. And the way that Alabama lost at home against Texas is more concerning than the way that LSU lost. I see a path for LSU to get their feet back underneath them, which is why I wish I put them at the 10th spot. I don't have as much confidence in Alabama. And I think eventually they're going to be completely out of my top 10.
You know what I almost did? Can I tell you something that I just wanted to stir shit up?
What?
I almost put Colorado in my top 10.
That I wouldn't have taken you seriously, and I would have skipped this.
I know, because I wouldn't have taken me seriously. But here's the thing. They got Colorado State this weekend, okay? Then they have Oregon.
That's an important game.
Now, if they beat Oregon,
we're going to have a real combo.
Very serious discussion that we're going to all have to have as college football fans. Joe, if they beat Oregon and they are 4-0, I am putting them in the top 10.
Oh, without a doubt. That is an amazing victory, and they're already ranked. I'm putting them in the top 10 if they do that. But it's an uphill battle to beat Dan Lanning and to beat Oregon. So we can't get too ahead of ourselves.
Almost did it.
It's a good point. That's a good point. One of my big issues, though, that I had with yours, I am still really against the placement of Ohio State as a top 5 team. Unless I need to see what happens against Notre Dame before I put them at 5 or higher. If they beat Notre Dame, I'm quieted. My questions are completely eradicated. And
did you watch any of that game against Youngstown?
I caught highlights. I'm high on Youngstown. I put them in my top 25 poll for the FCS, so I'm high on them.
They bled the clock. Bled it.
I understand that.
The score of 35-7 in truth should be 56-7. And I'm giving Ryan Day the benefit of the doubt. I am giving a program with a quarterback who, by the way, Devin Brown, I like the kid. I don't think for the weapons that Joe, they were electric offensively against Youngstown. It's a Rudy Putek team. I get it. Kid looked better in the pocket. He threw the ball on delivery. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 2 tutties. They figured it out. Schematically, what I saw, I liked a lot. And Youngstown bled it. Joe, they would run 3 yards, go for it on 4 sometimes. Not really, but they ran and bled the clock. And quite honestly, it didn't. The score never. When we stat sheet talk about teams, It never plays out like that. Never.
It's fair. It's fair.
You know, like, I mean, I'm watching the game again this morning, and I'm like, what am I missing on Ohio State? And I'm like, no, man, they got top 5 talent. I think they got top 5 coaching, really. I don't think that they suck at – I don't think that – Joe, they just got to – they're going to have to find a way to put it together. And I think that they can. They lose to Notre Dame, fine, but I don't know if they will. I really don't.
It's all going to come down to quarterback play. But what's hanging in my head so significantly is that Indiana game. And we only have 2 games to go off of. And like I have to – look, I'm sorry to say this. I have to throw out the Youngstown State game. Like, that's a good win. You throw it onto the record, and it goes into the resume, blah, blah, blah. They might have looked better. But it's against Youngstown State. That is a cleanup game. That's a game where you go out and you do things to clean up the issues. You feel a little more confident, and then you move on to the next week. That performance means nothing to me.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Who are the best 2 college football teams of all time?
LSU in 2019 and probably one of the U teams in the early 2000s.
Okay. Miami beat Boston College 19-7 when the 01 year, 19-7.
Okay.
19 LSU beat Auburn 23-20. There are going to be times when you play opponents, when you're working in new personnel, working in a new quarterback. Joe, wins are very hard to come by. Very hard.
I get that.
Okay. I just don't think we should overreact to them just yet. Now, am I confident in them? Not really. I'm not confident in them, and I'm playing off of a historic thing. But I'm just not willing to throw in the towel on them just yet.
I can understand where you're coming from. It's just I haven't seen anything that they've done that has screamed, this is a top 5 team. This is a team that's going to be banging on the door to the college football playoff. I haven't seen any exposure of that. I have only seen the issues, especially in that Indiana game. I don't even know who they play this week. Who do they play this week?
I'm not sure.
I'm going to look it up really quick.
Probably Rudy Putek.
They play Western Kentucky. Okay, so we're not going to have an answer until they play Notre Dame. So I'm going to keep them where they have them, and I'm going to probably bitch at you next week when they only win by 28 or whatever because they run the clock again. And then we can talk about it the following week in week 4, and then it's going to be a really fun debate.
All right, continue.
No, what were you going to say? No, you have any other issues with mine?
No, the only other team I think the honorable mention that we should put in there, I'm really interested in about Miami. Okay. I think that they're also knocking on the door, but I need to see a little bit more from them, okay, before I just crown them and put them in the top 10. I do think that you got Texas a little bit high, man. Okay. Look, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have both things. You can't say that Alabama is a really down team that could be 8-4, 9-3, and say, well, you just beat an 8-4 team. Well, and okay, you beat an 8-4 team on the road. Okay, and you're a 10-point favorite. You win by 10 points against a team that you think that Joe could go 8-4, 9-3, right?
Yeah, 9-3 is what I've said.
Okay. And
that to me,
it's an overreact. Okay. This is so we could probably transition into this. This is my overreaction of Overreaction Monday.
I believe that my placement of them at number 4 is justified because it is the perfect combination of win against a ranked opponent on the road. Even if they finish with 9 wins, they're still a top 25 team, without a doubt. And also passing the eye test.
Team, they'll put them in the top 25.
Right. And passing the eye test. I said this on the recap show that all of their deficiencies against Rice and the concerns that we had from the offseason were completely squashed. They corrected all of those issues for that game. And I have proof now.
No, they did not.
I have proof now that they can play at a high level. I have proof now that Quinn Ewers can, if he's on, connect on those deep balls and that they can hit those deep passes and they can stretch defenses. One of those teams that I value that a lot. Quarterback with a big arm and fast receivers that catch those balls consistently. But the other thing, too, I was down on their defensive line. They bottled up and broke down that Alabama rushing attack. They didn't surpass 4 yards per carry. They kicked the crap out of Alabama's offensive line that was theoretically, we all thought was supposed to be really good. I really do think that they're going to make the playoff. I really, really do think that's going to happen after the way that they played yesterday.